Thanks so much to our title sponsor, Visit Bloomington. We would not be here without them. Check them out, visitbloomington.com.
Hey, say, honey, let's go out to eat. Relieve our culinary duties. With all these restaurants to sweep us off our feet, they're bound to turn us into foodies. Oh, no dishes, no dishes, no dishes. We'll have a bottle of wine, relax and have a good time. No dishes, no dishes.
Welcome to another episode of the No Dishes podcast, one that I think is going to be muy bueno. With Eric Bueno from Feast. What's up, dude?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just, glad to finally make it out here. Like you said, we've been working on it for a little while now, so feels good. A little excited to just get on board and tell my story, I guess. Yeah,
you said you get one night off a week, and we appreciate you taking the time for us. And,
oh yeah,
I mean Feast is a staple, man. And I've for as long as I'm like coming up with who do we need to have on, and I was like, dude, we got to talk to Eric. So
yeah, it's definitely a good little spot. It was. I obviously can't take all the credit, but I kind of took over there. It's been going on 6 years now, I think.
Man, yeah. I knew it'd been a while.
And so I've been able to keep it popping and still kind of do my own thing. And so that's always a good sign, a good feeling, I guess. Yeah.
So what is your, I guess, mantra when it comes to like cooking? What are like your core values when you're putting together a menu, and what do you want people to get out of their experience at Feast?
Well, I think the biggest thing I shoot for, obviously I get this question a lot, and it jumps around obviously as I kind of evolve over the years as well. But the main thing that I shoot for, if I had to pick one, would be kind of something that's unique and something that you don't really see a lot. Obviously, I grew up with my family. I've got a pretty diverse background, but we, for the most part, my grandparents would kind of hit the chain restaurants, and so I grew up with a lot of that. And I try to, whenever I'm coming up with something or a menu or anything really, I try to just think of that and think of how not to do that. Or
don't be Olive Garden.
Yeah, exactly. And so with some of the better restaurants kind of popping up, Elm and Small Flavors.
Favors, yeah,
Favors.
Dude. Yeah. Small Favors, big Flavors.
Yeah. Starting to see a little bit more, when I started Feast, I feel like it was kind of out on an island. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. But Erica and Jenny, the sister duo that obviously owned it before, had a really unique thing going. And I think that's what drew me along, that same premise. And I kind of just thrived when I started in learning things under her and the chefs that were there at the time. And it really kind of fit with kind of what I found as my passion and direction that I wanted to go to. So I think that's why it's made it so easy to kind of carry on after, she stepped out. And
talking about Jenny or Erica?
Erica mostly.
Yeah, because she was more of the chef, right?
Certainly. She was the chef. Jenny handled a lot of the business, and I always thought that was a good kind of dynamic they had there. And it worked really well. She did a lot of stuff in the community, the markets. I think where she got her start, and before she actually opened Feast. And so that was a fun little, experience for the short time that I was kind of involved in that. Once I jumped,
was that like tamales and stuff mainly?
Tamales, and we did a lot of savory kind of pastries. We had a couple hand pies, a couple quiche type dishes that she had, and super good, super easy to sell kind of in the market setting. So that also kind of thrived and just helped with everything financially.
Was that so when you started? Were you still at Hillside and Henderson?
Yeah, I spent a year over there, and I kind of enjoyed that space a lot.
Yeah, it was a cool. I mean, it was tiny. It was powerful.
It was very tiny. Yeah, they had a basement prep area, so with a full flight of stairs. So one thing I remember is just having to go up and down with orders or prep items coming back up. So that was a little precarious sometimes.
Oh, dude, I'd be scared shitless. I was gonna just spill everything.
There's certainly a couple times I can think, just if it was raining out or something like that, carrying the order down. It was always a little iffy, but we made it work, and it was a good little space.
Yeah, well, so I found out Erica is the one behind Planted, the new vegetarian food truck. They're going to be, so we're recording this. Again, I told you this is going to come out later, but this is the week before Lotus Festival, and we moved Food Truck Friday to Kirkwood for the Food Truck Village. And just today they booked to have the Planted truck there on Friday, so I'm so pumped.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, I know Erica knows how to make great food, and she's got a really good team. And we've had the Tasty Plate, doing vegan, vegetarian stuff at Food Truck Friday. Last year we had Rude Radish out of Indy, Ryan, who's running the kitchen in Upland now. And it's like, dude, even as a carnivore, like these vegan, vegetarian dishes are incredible.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've obviously heard a lot about that. I guess not fine details, but, being kind of in that circle still, hearing about it. I had a friend that actually was able to make it out to the soft opening and said it was just kind of incredible. So, super excited to kind of see that roll out, especially knowing what she can pull off. And so, yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully I can find a time to make something out of that. So,
yeah. Friday, 11 to 11. I think they're going to close down between lunch and dinner, but I know you're busy guy. Maybe I'll bring something down to you. Text me what you want. I'll come swing it down. I just need some feast baked goods in return.
I think we can probably manage something like that. Yeah.
We always, for the longest time doing events, we budgeted for the JTT, the Jordan trade tax, which is me trading ice cream for other people's food.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's how it goes.
I definitely know how that goes. Always willing to kind of to trade and get some exposure to, me or anyone in the industry who's working so much. It's kind of hard to get out sometimes. So kind of have to rely on some of those little connections. Yeah.
All of us industry folk gotta look out for each other,
Yep.
When you started at Feast, what was your role? Did you just start as like a line cook?
Yeah, I just, I spent about 4 years at Scotty's before that, if you remember Scotty's. And I just ran the line there. And so I was just kind of looking for something else, a little higher level.
Yeah, not making Schumann burgers all the time.
Although that was my favorite burger. Oh my goodness.
The old peanut butter jalapeno.
People throw trash at me when I say you should try this, but it's always a home run.
Don't miss Constellation Stage and Screen's family holiday show, Matilda the Musical, on stage December 14th through 31st at the Buskirk Chumley Theater. From the visionary mind of Roald Dahl comes the Tony Award-winning Matilda the Musical. Packed with high-energy dance numbers and astonishing stage magic, children and adults alike will be thrilled and delighted by the story of an extraordinary little girl. See Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical on stage December 14th through 31st in downtown Bloomington. Find tickets at cconstellation.org. Well, that's you're probably like me, where like we like really good food, but you're always gonna have a soft spot for kind of shitty food.
Oh yeah, I mean, people often ask me what I eat, and lately, I'm trying all these. I'm always trying stuff at work, so when I get home, my appetite isn't crazy.
Right.
I'll have to admit to a $30 Taco Bell run every now and then. So.
Like you have a good time? No, I had a Baja Blast.
But
what's your go-to Taco Bell order?
Oh man, I don't. 2 hours probably is enough for the order that I put in.
You're at $30. That's a lot.
Yeah. I usually the Crunch Wrap's always good, so it's always something in there, and then the gordita or the the chalupas are usually my favorite.
The move, okay.
Yeah. So, and then I'll put about 4 fire packets on each one. I like it hot. So
yeah, I got to kick it up a notch.
Yep.
So, all right. So, yeah, you wanted to move to something more elevated from Scotty's.
And so jumped over there.
To Hillside
and Henderson. And I just kind of fell right into the line work there. I'm pretty good on a line. It's kind of where I feel the most comfortable home. I'm fast. I can kind of read things good. And
you just find the ticket printer soothing.
It's a lot of people cringe when they hear it, but I don't think I ever had that factor. So line work was always my strength. So jumped in there. Obviously a lot different. Scotty's I had on our busy days, we had 9 people on the line. And so I jumped on our busy days, we had 2. And then a lot of times I was just running the line by myself. So there was going from, pushing out 80 tickets at a time to what their busy was. It was like a walk in the park. It felt like, obviously the food was a step up, but that's kind of what I wanted. So it was a welcome change. I think my mindset going into that was I wanted to, go somewhere where I could be humbled a little bit and learn something. And it definitely was an adjustment, but I kind of fell right in and took off from there.
How long did it take before they started being like, okay, now you're this title, now you're this, until you're the exec chef?
It was about a year I spent over there. And at the time, we had a chef there. His name was Bob Easterbrook. He's jumped around a little bit. I think he helped open Orbit Room. He's been,
the name sounds really familiar. Yeah.
So he worked there for about the first 6 months before he took off for some different things. And I think the combination of seeing what he did, which he worked at Talent, I think, when that was open.
Yeah.
So he learned a lot of things there, and he had some skills that I just soaked in. One of them kind of being pasta. That's just something that he was dead set on and loved making. So I kind of fell into that. But about 6 months I spent kind of learning under him, and then I would work brunch, which is kind of a harder thing to get people to do.
Yeah, but that was the feast brunch.
But feast
top
brunch
tier,
over there down the line. Like once, I think 9:00 and we opened the doors, we like filled up with tickets right away, and it was just go until 2:00. So that was obviously a good learning experience too. I was just always on the egg station and flipping eggs and frying chicken. So
worst gigs to be had.
Yeah,
flipping eggs and frying good chicken.
It may not sound glamorous, but if you enjoy what you're doing. I remember the first brunch shift, I went home and I lived with a roommate and my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I actually had fun today. And they're like, what?
Are you feeling okay?
Yeah. And so that was a hard concept to get people. I was like, I have fun doing this. Like we just got rocked and I had fun.
Yeah.
So
that's a special type of person that like you want to be busy. You want to like, for me, I've like found my mental health is better when I'm busy and like busting stuff out. Like, where you're just like, oh yeah, like you just get in that rhythm, that flow, and you're just like, oh yeah, like I got this shit.
Yeah.
You know?
For me nowadays, being the exec and dealing with all the business, whatever I have to do on the business side, and anything else for that matter, menu changes. When I just get to be on the line, it's easy because I know what I'm doing. I know what I have to do. The rest is kind of an open slate that I have to try and find my way through, the forest to figure out the end. But line work there's no real thinking. If you're busy, you just kind of go and do it. And I don't know, that is, it's not for everyone. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I feel like that's how most executive chefs are. They want to be cooking.
Yeah.
Like the other stuff is kind of, not necessary evil, but like it's part of the job. But like, man, if you can just, once you're doing what you do, like that's where you want to be. That's home.
I mean, the last, I don't even want to guess at how long. I'll say 6 months, but it's probably been a little longer, up and down. We have a lot of good people who have worked at Feast for a long time. Our core group, there's been, I'd have to say the longest one he's worked there for 7 years, so technically longer than me. Started dishwashing. A couple of our prep people have worked there for around that time. And then my sous chef, she's worked there for about 6 years too. So it's kind of odd to have that tenureship. I feel like the turnover is always high.
Yeah.
And for a long time there, it wasn't. COVID obviously threw a wrench in that. I feel like a lot of good people moved on to either bigger places in bigger cities or just kind of different career paths in general.
Yeah, just got out of the restaurant. I know a lot of people that got out of the restaurant industry because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And then never came back, you know. Once they tasted having a weekend off. They're like,
oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like maybe I got blessed in that. I don't know, blessed or cursed. Because I remember when COVID hit, me and Jenny sat down. I think I took over over here on Patterson for about a year, and then COVID hit, and we came in and had a meeting that night on whether to stay open or close, and we decided to stay open. And I think back to that as like a pivotal moment. At the time, it was just like, what do we do? But looking back at some of the other places who may have closed and never recovered or closed for a little bit or whatever the case, I think it was a good decision to stay open, and it was tough. It was just kind of me and Jenny there for a little bit. I'd be working the line, pumping out to-go orders from like 9 to 8 or 9 at night. So a lot of the other employees got their COVID pay, and you know, as unfortunate or not for them, some of it was kind of better, but I put in the hours and it worked out in the end. Yeah,
well, they were able to keep you on. If they closed, you probably would have gone somewhere else and wouldn't still be there today. So I definitely think it was the smart decision.
Yeah, I think of what ifs a lot and try to just humor myself and try to think of where the path would have gone. And that one, I really have no clue what would have happened. You never do, but who knows what could happen.
Right. I feel like we talked about like what's your mantra, your style, and we were talking. Garrett, was it Carrie Thompson? I think because we had Carrie on, who's going to be Bloomington's next mayor, and she was talking about how much she loves Feast, and I think I best described it as like almost like kind of rustic and like earthy in a way. Do you feel like that'd be accurate?
Certainly close. I think another way I describe it a lot to either anyone who asks or new employees that I'm bringing on, when I describe like how we're cooking in there, it's different than any other restaurant, which I can maybe touch on, but I'm cooking like if I were cooking at home. You know, we have 6 burners and a small flat top and a couple ovens. We don't have fryers. We don't have grills. We don't have any, fancy equipment. A lot of time I compare it to kind of Cutthroat Kitchen. If you've seen that, just kind of throwing a grill grate on the burners, and that's how I'm grilling any grilled items I have. I've actually set up a hotel pan with charcoal in there before. And then if I'm frying anything, I'm setting up a pot of oil on the back burner. And so it kind of limits, but at the same time, it kind of steers the direction. I don't have a ton of fried foods. We keep to the farm. I got farmers coming in, twice a week minimum. And then if I'm working the line, I'll throw a special on based on whatever they have, and they'll come in and bring something. And so a lot of that is just like kind of home down cooking, without any fancy equipment. So it's different than any restaurant I've been in, which I've been in a couple. It's been, I kind of tenure myself everywhere I go, but, I've been around a little bit, and, Scotty's being the biggest one with all their full line and full equipment. It was definitely an adjustment there too, on how I'm cooking things.
Yeah. I mean, it was a chain experience. I mean, it's a local chain, but Scotty's was a chain and ran like one, That's crazy. You guys don't have a grill or a fryer.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
I think just last week, Logan Hunter is in a lot. He was working with Endeavor for a little bit. But he kind of just spends his days there at Feast now working on, he's got a couple movie projects, some big stuff. But I've, grown a relationship with him, and I'm always cooking him stuff, and he's just kind of raving, and I'm just sitting back there like blushing, whatever. And he's like, man, however you grilled that steak. And I was like, I don't have a grill back here.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? And he like peeked back, and he's like, you seriously don't have a grill? That was the best grilled steak I've ever had if you don't have a grill. So
Logan knows his stuff too, man.
Yeah. Yep.
That's cool. He's still coming back, hanging in there.
I see he's probably there. I mean, at least 4 times a week.
Wow. Tell him I said hi.
Yep.
He was our longest ever episode of this podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you at all.
No, not at all, honestly.
Self-proclaimed Captain Tangent.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, he when we were doing bingo at MetaWorks, that was right before he left Endeavor. That was kind of what they had specializing on. You went in there and helped with that menu, right?
I did. I was, Jenny did her role at Endeavor for a while. She helped with operations, but her big thing was helping with the designs and everything. So they obviously had a direction over there. But she was in there helping, and I would just kind of stop by, and I would work on the menu. That used to be my one night off, would be going over there. So, so that was a good learning experience, kind of what I'm doing at Feast versus what we needed to do at Metalworks to kind of make it work. Was certainly a different style, but I kind of dialed back into those Scotty days and kind of pump that out. And I actually haven't heard or been over there in a little while because it's just been so busy at Feast.
Yeah. The food was I always really enjoyed the food. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it was, you're like, okay, let's do Scotty's, but elevate it. Yeah. like the pulled beef.
Oh yeah.
Was really, really good. The nachos, the wings, every time we did bingo there, I was eating.
Oh yeah.
And what was it? Ian from Farm that was in there?
Yep. Ian, I kind of trained him for a little while. I didn't know him before that, but I'd heard the name. But he was in there for a little bit, and then Logan, kind of took over, and I'm not sure exactly who was in the kitchen jumping around there. That was about the time where I kind of lost a little connection, but it was a fun little, side project, I guess I could call it.
Well, you gotta diversify, because again, Feast, you have your lane. Obviously, you got to be extremely creative there, and you are. But yeah, you're not going to get a chance to do pub food.
Yeah, exactly.
Feast,
I think, and it was fun in that way because there's from time to time that I do try to do those pub things, like when we do a burger, which I haven't done in a couple months now, but it's always fun to get a burger and fries, and we had Fry Wednesday. I mean, people love that. When I do it at Feast and I'm really able to kind of elevate that pub scene, it's kind of fun, and it certainly goes over well.
Dude, I'm so glad you said burger, because I don't know if I would have remembered bringing this up, but the best burger I've ever had was at Hillside and Henderson Feast.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember what the toppings were, but I know pickled zucchini.
Oh yeah,
was one of them. Do you remember what the?
I do. So we had our house. We had that at that time. We went up to Indy every week to get bread from Amelia's Bakery and Renee's, and so we had their brioche bun, which I thought was really good. We had Fisher Farms ground beef that we pattied in house. They would bring in a big cooler of 50 pounds a week at least. And we'd take it downstairs and patty it out. And that's kind of where it drew, but it was tomato and pickled zucchini, which was kind of the key. And then
and it was like a sweet pickled zucchini too.
It's kind of, it didn't hit me at first because it was so kind of different when I first started there, but it's just kind of that bread and butter-esque, which usually wasn't my thing. But I remember that burger, it was a really good put together burger. Nothing crazy.
Was there a sauce on it or anything?
House made aioli.
Okay.
Just kind of, fresh garlic and egg yolk and oil. And so, we made that in house, and that's another kind of mantra that I stuck with is I don't try to buy a lot of things, U.S. foods or anything like that. If I can make it, I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah.
And some people frown upon that. I actually just saw a video of David Chang. Like, he's like, I don't care if it's house made. Is it good? And yeah, he's got a point. If you can make it in house, that's cool. But if it's not good, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I stick to that house made, but I always want to make sure, obviously, it actually makes a difference.
Right. Yeah.
And that burger's a good example. I think just all those fresh ingredients, fresh tomatoes from the farmers in the summer, and the house made pickles, and it's real simple, but it was amazing.
Well, I think the thing too, you said you're not typically a fan of bread and butter, but like bread and butter pickles are usually a little more thick. Those zucchini they were cut like this thin ribbon, which I think made it not quite as like sweet in your face. It was more of an accent.
It's good. It's a good example of like just a simple, change in how it's cut kind of hits how it tastes in your mouth. So
how it hits the palate.
Yeah.
And you should, if you ever bring that back, that burger, will you please let me know?
Oh, definitely.
Because that's like, I swear, it's weird because you said you hadn't had a burger in months, but people are like, where's the best burger in town? And I'll say Feast, because I always categorize your smash burgers and your thick boys.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a thick boy.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I guess you can't always go to Feast and get a burger. The Bloomington Town Planner is a community calendar owned and published by local residents John and Sharon Martin. Mailed out to Bloomington homes in December of each year, it features school schedules and community events. And don't forget the coupons at the bottom of the calendar. They'll save you money and help you decide on the next restaurant or retailer to check out here in the Bloomington area. Town Planner also has an online calendar which can be found at townplanner.com. Make sure to sign up for their weekly e-newsletter so you can stay on top of all the fun events going on around town.
Yeah, and so that like kind of elusiveness always draws people, but when it is that sort of high quality, product with the elusiveness, it's really a kind of a home run.
Yeah, just like the McRib, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't even get me started on the McRib.
Yeah, high quality product, elusive. Feast burger, McRib.
Oh yeah. So I think, when we're going back past in high school, my mom worked at McDonald's for 17 years.
Oh wow, really?
All the way up to kind of regional manager, and then she took almost a 50% pay cut to get out of the business. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much I guess you were making.
I mean, you can work your way up at those places.
Oh yeah. And all the money floating around, obviously being big corporations, but the McRib was always just, people like gag when I say it, but I loved it.
Dude, all right. Thank you. See, I knew we had that like similar, like again, we like our nice, fine, refined items, but there's a place.
Yeah.
Garrett probably hates the McRib, knowing Garrett, but I love the McRib. If it comes back, every time it's back, I'll get like two. Not at the same time.
I don't think I've ever even had one, to
be
honest.
Yeah, that checks out.
You'll have to treat me when it comes back around.
You gotta live a little, man.
I mean, I think this is just a PR tactic, but the last time it was out, I think they said it was the final time.
Yeah, it's total.
So I don't see how that was ever possible or ever will be.
No chance. I love their like, have you seen how they're made? Have you seen them like playing in the freezer? I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, do you still eat hot dogs? Like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's something that kind of pops up every once in a while. So, one of my goals at Feast or in this path that I'm kind of proclaiming is I'm just trying to learn stuff. I didn't go to culinary school, so I didn't have, that 4 years. And to me, I honestly view that as a blessing because I meet some people who have, and they're so tied to that and what they've learned. That I think it kind of holds them back a little bit.
Yeah.
Certainly not everyone, but kind of the general case I see from people that work for me or around me. I feel like they're tied to those techniques a lot, which techniques are good, and that's where the base of everything is. So I try to teach myself those techniques as best I can in the restaurant, and I have the freedom to kind of do that and the kind of skill, I guess, to pull it off. And still learn at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, real world in restaurants, man, real world experience is just so invaluable.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say on those zucchinis. So there was a hot dog cart the first year we did Food Truck Friday called Who's Your Doggy? And then he moved to Oregon, so we bought it from him. We changed it to a food cart called the Gravy Train. And so we made our own pork belly, did this like thick cut butcher's block ham. But then because of that burger, we pickled our own zucchini for a Cuban.
Oh, nice.
And did it like in that bread and butter style. Shout out to Sam Power who executed it very well. And I always gave Feast credit for it too, because it's like a Cuban pickled zucchini. And then we actually do it with our Cuban now at the Moose. Because of that, it's whole grain mustard instead of yellow with the sweet pickled zucchini. So it's kind of the sweet and spicy. Because of that burger many years ago, nice. The Cuban at the Chocolate Moose right now has sweet pickles. I'm
gonna have to try that. I don't think I don't get to the Chocolate Moose a whole lot, but
I've noticed. I'm just kidding.
But I've never had really any food for sure there. And the Cuban is one thing that's actually been on our current menu for about 2 years. With the difference in setup that Hillside had, burgers were easy to execute there. They're not current in like our current setup. So that's why I only do them every once in a while. But my alternative to that was the kind of go-to that we have is a Cuban. And so we make our own mustard. We obviously do our own pork, and I stuck with the dill pickle, just cause that was more my style. It's a cheaper item that we have if you just want to come in for a dinner sandwich or something, and it's a pretty popular thing that we got going on there. So I'm gonna have to try and kind of compare. And
I've had it. In no way am I comparing Chocolate Moose hot food to Feast. But yeah, we've had it in Nashville for a while, and we just added it at Walnut a few months ago. Nice. But whenever hit me up, I'll make it for you. So I got to make sure it's done. Right. Yeah. Get you a little shake to go with it.
Definitely.
How often are you guys? Do you mix up your menu? I know again you're very farmer dependent, seasonal.
Yeah. So I definitely have always stuck to at the very least a seasonal menu change, because we have those farmers, and it kind of varies with what they're giving me. So every spring I'll switch to kind of a lot of the green stuff, and then the summer we're doing the corn and tomatoes, and then fall it gets back to the kind of squash, and then into the winter that kind of carries over. And nowadays I kind of rely on specials. I'm doing a special almost every night.
Really? Okay.
And in one way or the other, whether it's, a couple nights in a row or not, depending on what I get. Having to try and do a lot more on the business side. I've had to rely on some more actual line workers rather than me being there every night. Not as of the last month or so, but that's at least what I try. And so the menu I have, it's a little more in place. We have some Feast classics that I've got, a nice steak dish. We've got the Cuban, and then I have a small part on that menu that is seasonal. Right now we have a good corn risotto that's great, but
sorry, I love corn. I love risotto. I'm just,
yeah.
You're gonna hear me wait.
It's really it's got some hot honey honestly that I think makes it. But so I definitely have some seasonal stuff on the actual menu, but I really am just kind of day to day taking in product from farmers and then putting out a special. And I've done that a lot more than I did in the past, where in the past it would be kind of more big menu changes, and then I would focus on that, every couple months or so.
Right.
And less specials. And that's I just kind of pivot that kind of based on what's going on day to day.
I'm glad to hear that, because I'm a big specials guy. And I also love the lamb flatbread. I know that's like another Feast staple.
Yep. I was just having a little meeting about our lunch menu. I think I'm going to focus on lunch first, because I actually missed last season with lunch. I missed the spring kind of altogether, just being so busy.
Yeah.
I was working dinner and brunch, so it was a little easier to just kind of get that change implemented. Right. And the lamb flatbread was brought up, and they're like, that's got to go. It's been on there so long. And I was like, that is one of the most popular things.
Yeah. Do so at your own risk.
Yeah.
What's like an example of one of the more recent specials you've ran?
I think the most recent that I can remember off the top of my head, there's a lot of jumbled stuff going on right now, but I actually did a fried eggplant dish, breaded and fried panko, and it came with like a sweet chili glaze. We have a salmon plate on for lunch. If you've had that, that one is kind of a carryover from Hillside that I kind of revamped into my own way, not to just copy when I did move there. But this sauce is, I think it's got like 20 ingredients. It's sticky, it's sweet, it's spicy. So I did an eggplant dish with that sauce, and it was pretty good.
I'm trying to remember because I always see it on the menu. I'm trying to remember if I've had the salmon plate because I feel like I'm always like I've had the lamb flatbread for sure, but I'm usually like, what's new? What haven't I seen before? And I go with that. So I feel like I might have always skipped over the salmon plate just because of that. Maybe I'm missing out. It sounds like it.
I think if that's your mantra, the salmon plate is easily our best dish on the lunch menu, but dare I say even in general, it's smaller. Okay. It's a little small plate, so it is a lunch size, but it's got some crispy potatoes. It's got like a little sour cream mix with herbs and then that sauce, and it's really just out of this world.
Yeah, see now the more you describe it, now I'm thinking I have. All right, all right.
And maybe at the other location too. I'm coming back to similar.
Refresh. What is your favorite thing that you've made as far as like your taste that you enjoyed?
Yeah, so I'm obviously a big carnivore, but at the same time. So we have some short ribs that go through, just kind of fall off the bone. But I think the most favorite thing I've made in the last couple months I did is when I got my first tomatoes of the season from the farmers. I made like a tomato broth with a tortellini that I'm rolled myself. Currently, I'm the only one really trained in or willing to put the time in to hand roll the pasta, but it had a tomato pasta with a tomato ricotta on the inside, and it was sitting in tomato broth. But it had a piece of salmon that I smoke myself and then sear. It's not like the hardcore cured and smoked salmon,
right?
But I just do a quick smoke on that, and then I pan sear it just like you would any other salmon. So just pasta, broth, and salmon, that was probably one of the most flavorful and favorite things I've made in a while.
That sounds incredible. Yeah. Oh, and along with corn and risotto, ricotta is like one of my buzzwords that just gets me hook, line, and sinker every time.
I have trouble with the ricotta because we generally make it in-house. I think I bought it once. And it was only that one time I was like, this isn't even comparable to what I just made.
Yeah.
So that was a scenario where, okay, house made is clearly better. And I kind of stick to that.
Right. Well, sometimes it's good to be reminded.
Oh yeah.
Why it is you're laboring away while you're hand rolling pasta.
Yeah.
So since you've, been there, obviously, Jenny sold to Endeavor and became like a partner with them. She's not with them anymore. Have you noticed from the outside looking in, it seems like Endeavor has kind of left Feast on its own to do what it does?
Yeah. I mean, there's two reasons I think for that. One, that was like my main goal when we sat down with Mike Ross the very first day, and that he, introduced himself, and we were all sitting around, and he was trying to gauge, what the feeling of the purchase was. When there was a lot of mixed opinions on it.
Yeah.
Feast is a very local, oriented place, and so some of the stronger, employees on that value, they kind of were worried, and some people kind of were in the middle, and some people it doesn't really affect them, or at least they didn't think it would.
Right.
And my goal from the minute of that purchase was, Jenny was still going to be involved. She was still going to oversee things. Her and Sadie did a good job at that, and my goal was just fight to keep it the same, and I'm going to take the brunt of whatever Endeavor is wanting, and the workload. And they weren't asking for a whole lot. We were a profitable business, a popular one as well, and so they're not, idiots up there. If something's working, they're going to let it work. And, a lot of the only change that anyone saw, and that was really just me, was we dove a little bit into, more into the costs and what's going on. And it was, the numbers were coming out good. And so I think, he would always kind of check a box like, okay, reviews are good. Labor's good. Everything is kind of checking out. Yeah. So I have a meeting with them once a week, and I have put in a lot of work to kind of buffer that and keep it to where it's still feast and they're happy. And I mean, it's hard work kind of doing that, but it's working out. If you're popular and people are coming in, then that makes it a lot easier. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I feel like of all the businesses they bought, Feast by far had the best name recognition, reputation. Certainly. And that's the one that, I've seen the least amount of change in because of that, which that's good. That they recognize that, but then also that you've been there to be like, this is staying this way if there ever is a push to change something. Yeah,
I'm blessed with the name recognition. Like I mentioned, I think in the beginning, I didn't create Feast. I bought into what they were doing at Feast, and that buy-in is what you kind of want as a chef or an owner or someone who buys into what you're trying to do. And so I'm just kind of steady doing that. As far as Endeavor is concerned, I mean, it's always going to be a business, whether Jenny's owning it or Endeavor's owning it or whoever's owning it.
Right.
You're there to be a business and be successful and on, food and money and all those. And so I wasn't kind of daunted by, a company coming in. I worked with Scotty's, who was that, feel of corporate and what they were allowing me to kind of just stay the same. It was just a win-win in my eyes.
Right.
And there's some speed bumps here and there, but, new systems, but that's going to be kind of anywhere. And then, dealing with kind of the talk around town, and it's, I'm waiting to see if it starts to affect us. More employees, as I try to interview them, have kind of heard of Endeavor. And so they kind of like pause for a second when I mention that. But, a business is a business. They're going to do what they're going to do, but I'm here to make good food.
Right.
And if I kind of preach that and kind of stick to that and with the farmers and just keep doing good things, then they're going to leave us alone unless, they need to step in. But if they need to step in, then I've kind of failed. And so that is always a challenge, a personal challenge for me as a restaurateur or chef.
You haven't failed yet. So you're like, knock on, you're like, thanks for jinxing it, dude. Well, that kind of answered my next question of, how do you, see the stuff at like Hank's happening or wherever, or K-Bello, and still just be like, well, hey, like feel like I'm treated well. And I have friends that work at like Chop Shop that like, they enjoy working there. Cause I've had that just from my standpoint of like, oh, well, this sounds awful over here, but like I have friends with firsthand experience that is fine. How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I kind of just keep, I don't want to say necessarily keep blinders on, but a little bit of that. The one thing that is different and unique about how Endeavor is starting up or operating is, every restaurant is still different. Now that's, I think, where a lot of hurdles come into play with the system.
Right.
They're not
like
just
Scotty's where
everything is the same. So you just have one thing and one inventory to track and this and that. So managing that is kind of hard, but, since we all are ran separately and we're ran, as if, I guess, I was the owner is how it's portrayed. I pay the bills. I kind of manage the money, the costs and whatnot, and whether it's working or not. And so the fact that it's all separate there is an easy draw for anyone who's concerned. But at the same time, we're right next to Southern Stone. I talk to those guys a lot, a good bunch of guys over there. And they're doing some comparable things as far as, expectations. It's certainly different food, but they're working their butts off, and they've got, decent reviews over there as well. And it was always weird kind of being next door, and we never really talked to them before Endeavor. And they kind of they felt that we looked, down upon them. No one currently there. I don't think. That's a whole different crew, but
yeah, well, I mean, just because Feast has a reputation, Southern Stone was trying to rebuild what Sweetgrass kind of originally was.
And I think they, felt that we were better, and for me, it was never that case, and I don't think really anyone that I worked with, it was that case. It's certainly different, but we never really had any interaction. I think that was a weird perception, but. Right. But I have a good relationship with the guys next door now, and they obviously, they deal with the stuff with Endeavor, and I kind of tell them the same thing. If they're ever, feeling down about things, I'm like, just, I'm here to make food. That's how I look at it. If you love what you're doing, you're going to have to deal with business stuff one way or the other.
Right. You're like, am I enjoying what I'm doing? Am I getting paid? Do I feel like I'm being paid fairly? Then that's all that kind of matters.
And as far as, I have one check-in a week with Endeavor, and there's some emails, but if I feel that this guy needs to be paid what he needs to be paid, they don't really question that, as long as everything is balanced.
Yeah, so you're the one tracking labor.
Yeah,
so
and so that's what I tell them. Like, it's going to be a job, whatever, and you're gonna have to worry about that, whether it's yours or not. So
yeah. So are you the GM now of Feast? Because obviously the more we're talking, I'm like, you're doing a lot more than exec chef, man.
Yeah, definitely. So I do hold the title of GM and executive chef, and so it's a lot to take on at once. I'm working a lot, but I actually just moved in just a couple doors down from Feast. So I don't know if that's going to pan out to be better or worse.
Yeah.
But I do, and we've talked about, hiring someone in for a GM role, and that's where we run into how small Feast is and what we can pull off paying. We would obviously want to pay someone what they deserve in that position.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to balance, having that position. So we're small enough to where, I'm just pulling it off. There's some things that could be a little more organized, but, I focus on the food mostly, but we've popular enough to have, the revenue to pay everything. And so I've been lucky so far, honestly.
Yeah. How many staff do you have?
Currently, I think I have 2 prep people, about 4 line people that span lunch, dinner, and brunch.
Yeah.
So right now we're stretched thin. I actually am in the hiring process. So
if you hear this,
if you're watching
this is where you
this,
can talk to the camera. Yeah.
Yeah. We want you, but and we definitely couldn't stretch it any thinner right now, but and I think the biggest thing that's taking the hit is our tamales. So obviously, we carried that over from the previous Feast, and because we had them at both locations, and we used to have a whole crew that actually came in every day and kept our freezer stocked. We would sell the 4-packs frozen, and then obviously in the restaurant when we would steam them. But that is about where we've had to scale back a little bit. And I feel like we're scrambling to kind of keep the tamales going because they're so popular. But
yeah, that's tough.
It's not a bad problem to have, I guess, if they're that popular. But we went from having a crew of 3 people doing that to one of the dishwashers does it one night a week. And so, and that's not really a labor thing. That was just finding someone who's willing to sit over tamales for 4 hours and crane their neck. And so I don't know.
What about like front of house? Do you have like maybe 10 or?
Front of house, we have 3 main dinner servers. We have 2 baristas. So probably, I guess around 10, counting the lunch servers and brunch servers.
Yeah. So, I mean, your total staff for Feast is under 20.
If I'm I'm probably forgetting someone, but I'd say 20 to 30 is where we run on any time.
But pretty small. So it makes sense. Like, you want to hire in a GM at $60,000 a year, but like, is that, or whatever, is that worth it to manage that small staff if you have the back house?
We used to dabble with that position before Endeavor even. But I feel like there's just not enough when we're that small, there's not enough to do. And they're working for maybe 2 days, and then we're paying them, that big salary for the rest of the week, which, and they're not really doing anything. So it's hard to, with as busy as I am or anything, it's hard to say like there's nothing to do, but we'd add that level of position, and then it does kind of throw things out of balance a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you gotta, every place is its own individual thing, and you got to see what works for that place. It might not be the same model as everywhere else. Yeah.
I mean, I'm working a lot doing that, but again, I'm just viewing that as a learning experience.
Yeah.
Same with the Endeavor. Like that was, people say that I put up with a lot too much. So there's that, but I'm just kind of soaking in everything. So whether I see something that they're doing wrong or right, I'm learning something from that. So I'm definitely, putting in the hours, but I view that as just, stockpiling knowledge for whatever I kind of do in the future.
That's a great perspective for sure. Instead of getting caught up on maybe every little thing that you might not agree with, just being like, okay, let's see how that works. And if it doesn't work, then I'll know it for in the future for whatever your next, no pun intended, endeavor is. That, you'll have that in your back pocket,
I think that's kind of where whatever I've been doing, whether I come in and I'm making, $13 an hour. And I think that's probably about where I started at Feast. But that knowledge is kind of a priceless bonus that I was getting. At least that's how I view things. And I feel pretty confident in that. And some people say overworked or this or that. And, since COVID and that whole mantra, really people started to look at the industry and how it was ran and what it was going on and really evaluating that. And a lot of people jump ship to different industries or whatnot. And I, certainly crossed my mind, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to love cooking and like being in a setting like Feast where I can do what I do and do it well. Like I find that hard to trade out for anything, no matter what I've thought about I can possibly do.
Yeah. Have the freedom to be creative with the menu. And it's, I hate when people refer to businesses as families, but you are so small that, I'm sure you guys are pretty interconnected.
Certainly in the, because it was a family business before, with Jenny and Erica, and as their kids would grow old enough to work, they would jump in. They usually always start at the market. They would just run the booth at the market, and then eventually they'd move up and serve or cook or whatever the scenario would be. And Jenny's not involved at kind of a corporate level anymore, but she's still our wine director.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously we have a ton of wines, and that's the premise of Feast, which was also a learning experience for me. I come from a beer and bourbon kind of place, and taking that step up culinarily and then throwing in the wine and learning what pairs and what doesn't. Certainly it was a blank sheet when I started, but she still works as the wine director, is the title that I guess I call it. And so she orders it, organized tastings, and just kind of works with me on anything in that department.
I guess the other cool opportunity with this unique situation is that you get to gain all this knowledge from front of house stuff that most people that are exec chefs don't get.
Yeah.
And you probably too, also you're seeing the numbers. So how much overhead there is, how much shit costs. So it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to really pay everyone $20 an hour or something, but like you'd be paying $70 for a steak. I mean, obviously you want everyone to be paid fairly, but you've got to take into account just there's so much shit to pay for.
Oh yeah. And yeah, so, me and my sous chef are the only ones that do all the ordering. And then we're not even talking about the bakery side of things that, we really have like 4 different full departments. The bakery is pretty popular, always has been as well. And she's still flooded with special orders, and just people will come in and they'll want to buy, the whole bakery case out in one sitting. And so she's going crazy too, but
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. But definitely, back when I first started, I moved over and became the executive, at what ultimately was just the only remaining feast location. That was a weird scenario to kind of think about, because I was just in charge of cooking and really nothing else. I didn't really have any look at the books at that point. I would kind of just do whatever I wanted and order whatever I wanted. And Jenny would just check in and be like, hey, this is too expensive, or this is, not really working out or not selling or whatever. And then I would change it. And, she obviously was the owner and she ran that and quarterbacked it. But it was a good little platform for someone who's not, classically trained. I did a lot of all my, learning either under people before me or on the spot. Like when I started, I had no clue what it took to be an executive chef. Really, like if you asked me at that moment, I was like, I really have no clue. So definitely learning on the fly. The cooking was the easy part, but the chef is a different aspect of the equation that I still struggle with, kind of today, like defining that. A lot of people would say if you've gone to school, you're a chef, or, super, high-end Michelin style, or going to France and taking the master chef test. And so it's hard to define that, but I kind of just learned on the fly, learned how to kind of, it's not just the cooking, it's how you operate with your team. And once I kind of started viewing it as that, it kind of fell a little bit back into place due to in part of my, like, growing up. I was just an athlete's kid coaching. I actually went to college for sports administration.
Oh, really?
And took coaching classes there. And, I would go back to my high school and they'd be like, "Man, you're actually really good at this coaching thing. You should kind of go that direction." And I was like, yeah, kind of teaching someone who wants to learn is actually nowadays kind of my best treasure, because I've gained this knowledge. I've gained this direction that I want to go culinarily, and, where I want to go from here. And it's hard to find someone kind of that matches that desire or intensity. A lot of people are looking for jobs or this or that, or they've come in and eaten here and they want a job. I've got a couple people that don't really have the experience, but that's where, like, I'm willing to teach you if you're willing to learn. And so it's always fun to find someone like that. And
this is got to be super fulfilling to see their progress. Just like you came in there kind of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, wanting to learn, and now you get to be the teacher.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It makes me think of future potential spots of, hey, maybe I'll just teach somewhere if I ever do get tired of the bustle of the actual restaurant. But
the full grind.
Yeah. So. It's a little harder to find that just hiring employees than if you're actually in a classroom with people who want to learn that. But
yeah, but you get some that come along that they really want to soak up as much knowledge as they can, and it's more than just a paycheck. Not that there's anything wrong with just a paycheck, but some people do want to have more and get more out of it than just paying bills, which you need to do.
And that's I think nowadays where the fun comes back into play. As I, go home after working 60 or whatever hours, and I'm tired and I'm kind of down on the whole industry and hearing everyone like they left the industry and whatever. When I have someone like that, that's kind of what revitalizes me, and I'll go back to that brunch. Like I had fun. I had fun today because they took this and they think like they look at me and they think I know what I'm doing is really what it is.
Got them fooled.
So I say a lot that I'm like good at pretending, but
take it till you make it.
There's some skill in there somewhere, I guess. But
no, absolutely, man.
Definitely get some imposter syndrome.
Dude,
time to time.
All the time. The Chamber's doing this thing where it's like counteracting imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, awesome, but it was for like women in leadership. So like I can't go to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, like hopefully they run that for everyone because I was like, I need that. Because I'm sure you get it. People are like, oh, I love your food. You're an amazing chef. Like I'll have it with different things, and I'm just like, yeah, you feel like a fraud sometimes, you know. But it's like you're glad. I mean, it's great. It's a good thing to have. Is people enjoying what you're doing.
Yep, hard to fathom sometimes. You know, I do often. You know, I get a lot of customers actually saying like, you know, we've been to New York, we've been to LA, we've been to, you know, Paris. I don't know. Paris may not be the highest example I get, but people have been around and they're like, I don't know, man. Like this food that we have, it's comparable or outright better than some of those Michelin star places. And I don't know. I don't know if that's detrimental or not. Thinking like obviously it feels good to hear that. But it's just hard to believe sometimes, I think.
Yeah, and like you're worried that if you like take that to heart that you're going to lose your drive.
Yeah.
And you don't want to lose your drive because
definitely
that's what got you where you're at.
And I'm always been kind of a modest person. Even, you know, it comes across at that. I don't really, you know, there's not a lot that I think you really hear of me. I'm just head down to the grind, and I take everything as modestly as I can and just try to be humbled by it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everyone always thinks that of you, sees that of you. I mean, you're soft spoken naturally. So like that is just like, I didn't know if you would even want to come on here, you know?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I appreciate it because it's, got to give you your flowers, you know?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate, you know, you guys having me. Obviously it's not something I do a lot, but it is fun. And, we'll just kind of see what happens with it.
You talked about having a diverse upbringing and then going to school for sports administration and grandparents going to chain restaurants. Can you give us a little bit about kind of where you grew up, how you grew up?
Yeah, so, you know, I grew up mostly, first of all, my ethnicity, I guess, you know, I'm half Mexican, a quarter Irish, and a bunch of other stuff. I had a DNA test a while back just to kind of see, something like one of those. I think it was 23andMe, which a lot of it I knew, but it was fun to see some like deeper ones that I didn't. But so, you know, I grew up in South Bend, Notre Dame fans, hardcore. I think my whole family at some point has worked for the university. So for a long time, you know, being sports, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go play sports at Notre Dame. Obviously that's easier said than done. But, you know, I was always just kind of drawn as a kid to kind of Food Network and just watching everything. And I didn't really know it, honestly, until I moved to Bloomington, that I would kind of go down this path. But so I grew up with that, and then my dad was Mexican, so I'd visit him on the weekends and just be in that whole little different food group and seeing all those things. And on Christmas Eve, we would have about like 800 tamales. She'd be steaming pot after pot, my grandma would, and then balancing that with just kind of the Polish Irish background that is on the other side, that I actually you know lived with my mom and my grandma, and that was their background. I think like my great grandma moved over here from Ireland on that side, so not too far removed from that. And then the whole Notre Dame thing, and I didn't really know I was Irish until that DNA test.
Really? Okay.
But it kind of just made sense. I never really asked about it, I guess. But then the real wrench in things, my stepdad, when my mom remarried, or married for the first time, I guess, he moved over here from Nepal. So he lived in India. He lived, in the Himalaya mountains growing up, and then he moved over here. And so that was a whole new door of like culinary like exposure that I got. We would go visit his family, and there'd be 10 different, curries or all these different Indian dishes, and I would kind of watch them, make that. And, looking back, I mentioned I didn't really fall into the culinary path until I moved to Bloomington after college. But I look back at some of those experiences, and I wish I had more knowledge from what they were cooking or how they were cooking it, either any of the, groups that I was around. So
yeah, I mean, you were young.
Yeah.
Like you're not at the time thinking to like really like learn all the stuff that you want to know now.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned my mom worked at McDonald's for 17 years. So it was right around that time that she got out of it. So whatever little spark was there, it kind of went to the back burner as far as, working in a restaurant or anything like that.
Right. Where'd you go to high school? Was it South Bend, Washington?
I didn't. No, I actually went outside to a place called John Glenn.
Okay.
Pretty small. I graduated with like 120.
It's about the same size my class was. Yeah.
My mom she graduated from South Bend Adams, and then a lot of my cousins went to Washington.
Okay.
But I was out in the farm school, and my grandma had a farm that I lived on pretty much my whole life. And then I'd have family members in South Bend that I'd go on the weekends. So I also got like the farm life day to day, and then the metro life kind of on the weekends. And the farm life, I grew up and I was kind of starting to distaste it. I was in 4-H for 10 years.
All right.
My grandma was a goat farmer, and so I would show goats. And at the end of that whole, timeline, I was just like, I don't want anything to do with farming. So that was another like moment to where like now I'm involved in farmers so much, and I think I'm lying back and thankful of that time, obviously, to have that connection with, my grandpa would go out and he had a little vegetable garden. That's where they got their vegetables. So I was young and I distasted it at the time, but I'm so happy that I had that like upbringing there, and with all the different, ethnic food groups, and I kind of meld everything together. And that's really where my style kind of comes out on paper.
Season 5 of the No Dishes podcast is brought to you by visitbloomington.com. VisitBloomington.com is the best resource for restaurant and culinary information, special events, fun activities, places to stay, and more in our area. We share a similar mission here on the No Dishes podcast of highlighting local businesses and the people who make our community unique. We can't thank them enough for hopping on board. Check them out at visitbloomington.com to easily plan your next meal, visit, or night out on the town. So where'd you end up going to school for sports administration?
Went to Ball State, actually.
Chirp, chirp.
Yep.
There you go.
So I spent 4 years up there. I actually played club baseball and was coaching that for 4 years. I played baseball in high school, and then one of the seniors at the time, he went to Ball State and he actually took over. So when I got down there, he was like calling me every week, and I was good. I was a little above average, nothing crazy. Had some offers out of college, but I was just kind of apathetic in that direction, and
right.
And but again, like it all kind of panned out well. Went down, worked with them, and traveled around. Still got to travel, even being at the club level. Went down to Florida, went all over the place.
Oh yeah.
And then that was just kind of what I was doing. I was in sports administration, and then I graduated, and I started looking in Chicago at some of the like kind of what do you call it? I don't know, sports agencies, recruiting agencies is what it was.
Yeah.
I did some volunteer work for the Super Bowl, which was kind of cool. Escorting, and the Final Four when it was in the Indy.
So this is about Super Bowl when it was in Indy too?
Yep.
Okay, nice.
With the Indiana Sports Corps. And then, so I actually, that was a kind of hidden fun experience I kind of forget about, seeing some celebrities and whatnot. I think one of the Super Bowl gigs I did, It was like 6 a.m. I had to get there, and it was their little NFL experience. And Taylor Lautner was escorting a group of kids around for whatever he was doing, and I actually met Taylor Lautner briefly.
And you're a massive Twilight fan, I'm sure.
I am now. I guess I got all the T-shirts and whatnot. No,
is that Team Edward? Which one was Taylor? I don't know.
I forget which one was which. To be honest,
I'm trying to appeal to a different wider audience here. We can have a Twilight reel that brings.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. My brother volunteered for
nice.
the village, and I remember that's when we first got open containers for Indy, was because of the
the economic impact, which is a lot of what I studied, operational sports and stuff. It's kind of interesting to think about a lot of those laws and regulations. Just something so big can come in and just completely change everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. One even just through like Visit Bloomington sponsoring this season, but I get to serve on their board, and seeing that data from just like right now, FAO is having like a ping amateur tournament come in, and like LPGA has had like just how sports can really affect the local economy in like such a huge way.
Yeah.
Like, because we used to get in Bloomington so many like youth sports tournaments, but then all these other Columbus, Evansville, Terre Haute started like getting turf and lights, and so they'd go there and like we don't see as much on a Saturday at the Chocolate Moose as maybe we used to, but they're getting some turf put in Karst. But yeah, kind of crazy how much that affects things.
Yeah, it really is. So like, I studied sports administration, but it was a lot of business. So that kind of falls in line in some, way, at least seeing it's just a different kind of product that you're putting out. But that was like a whole different life ago. It feels like almost I came down here, I worked at Scotty's, and then I kind of decided, like, this is actually fun. When I was at Scotty's, I would do, I would always be messing around and do some fancy plating and whatnot in our downtime. And then eventually the GM at the time started using me as an incentive for like employee of the month or whatever. I forget whatever it was, but he would, pick employees for whatever merit. And then I would do a dinner for them off shift.
Oh, nice.
And so that was kind of, I don't know, where it really started to, bloom. And I think back to those dinners, and it's like nothing compared to what I'm doing now. But at the time,
didn't exactly have like farm fresh stuff and stuff. Certainly. It's a little bit.
But it was fun kind of starting there and then going there. And nowadays, compared to my like sports life, being at Feast, we don't have TVs. We don't have, it's not a bar setting.
Right. Oh yeah.
So in some ways I feel a little disconnected from that whole life, but,
it's a little classier, maybe.
Yeah, it's different. It's working out for me.
You put your pinky out when you drink stuff now?
I actually do ingest, but I'll just pretend I'm fancy or the wine. I think the one I do the most, being the wine bar when we have the stems, I'll just hold it with.
Sorry, I tried getting the fly.
Did you get it?
I didn't get it.
No,
you didn't get it.
I've been staring it down. No,
I know we've both been like talking, like just waiting. I thought I had it. No, next time. Anyway, sorry.
No, but
let the viewers know what you're trying to hit.
I know. Yeah, it's this. I'm sure they see it. It's it started during the BBC episode, and now it's been. Oh, here we go. No. All right, we'll let her go. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's there. Oh, this is going to be the most.
It's like taunting us.
And
no,
that was so close. All right, it's fine. Ignore the fly. I won't be a squirrel and get distracted anymore.
I don't know. It's certainly a little, fancier, which, is fine for me. Some people are uncomfortable almost in that setting, and I think that deters them from Feast sometimes. But certainly Feast, Elm has really done a good job at elevating things, and certainly the space is gigantic and beautiful and
gorgeous. Yeah.
And that's where we kind of lie back on the rustic, like, feel of things. But it's, anyone who thinks it's too fancy, I don't see that. It's really simple food. I spent a couple trips going out to Southern California, San Diego, and a little bit of LA. And I ate at a restaurant down there that I kind of model things by without, just straight copying them because they're so good, in my opinion. But their motto is simple ain't easy. And they're doing simple things. And on the back end, it's hard work, but it comes across as simple. It's not pretentious. We don't try to be pretentious. I know wine is a different, a feeling, and it does give that, fancy feel, but we have a lot of fun there, and it's just good food in a chill, rustic atmosphere. Pretty artsy. Jenny is, before she helped Erica open Feast, she did tours selling her art. So everything that's kind of in Feast, even now with her still at least working there, is stuff that she's done. There's some stained glass stuff there. That's that, and there's a little mural of butterflies on the wall that's pretty cool that she handmade, and so it's pretty unique. I don't view it as pretentious. I certainly don't push that, but
yeah, I don't think it is at all. I mean, I think it's very approachable, and it's so funny when you said that. It took me back to, in February, I was in Old San Juan. I went to this place called Marmalade. It's supposed to be, they've won a lot of wine, whatever magazines, best pairing restaurants in the world or whatever. And it's very close to supposed to be a Michelin star. And it was an all right experience, but I was at this group table. And because I was a one top, and I'm sitting next to this couple from New York, New Jersey, and we were talking, and I'm just yeah, I feel like everyone just wants something that's elevated but approachable and just not pretentious. And they're no, we like pretentious. And I'm I'm oh, never mind. Maybe that's just Bloomington. But I'm glad we're at least on the same page.
I mean, there's certainly a handful of people that kind of grind our gears when they come in, and we have the ability to take care of them and do that, but we have to step out of our lane to kind of do that. And so that's kind of just what reminds me of anyone who thinks we're pretentious. I think they have a misconception.
I feel like anyone that thinks Feast is pretentious is the same people that are going to a chain restaurant for their birthday or something.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Maybe we often get what do you give away for your birthday? And we're like,
you're at the wrong,
pat you on the back. It's not, I don't know. It just doesn't come across that way, but
yeah, no, it's totally different. That's such a funny thing to ask in Feast.
Yeah.
What do you guys give for your birthday?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, working in it instead of going out to restaurants all the time, you kind of forget about those sort of things, but I'll hear stories from the servers every once in a while, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a mutual respect between back house and front of house. We all have to deal with our own unique bullshit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's another thing I kind of mandate, I guess, at Feast is we're not, first of all, a lot of times it's me back there cooking, and so I'm kind of quiet and just focused. But when I do have someone kind of running the line, which happens from time to time, there's no screaming and yelling. There's no angry, French chef back there degrading everyone or whatever. And to the few employees that have come through that are kind of like that, they kind of call me out for what I'm doing back there, but I want people to feel like they can be part of their style. Obviously, we have a quality standard, but there's a couple different styles that float around in Feast. Even the lunch and kind of dinner menu is kind of a good example. But while I do oversee everything, there's a little bit of that freedom that they have, and I get called out on that a little bit.
About being too soft spoken?
Not so much soft spoken, but kind of letting people do their own way.
Yeah, not managing them anymore.
Yeah, and while I see that and I try to balance that while maintaining the standards, it does kind of speak to why people kind of stick around for as long as they do. If you're good at what you're doing, I'm going to recognize that and give you some freedoms there and there. I work so many hours, I can't do everything. So
you got to pick your battles.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You can't, you're not going to always agree with everything you see going on.
Yeah.
But if you try to correct and you still have that standard or quality,
Yeah.
But if you try to every single one, you're going
to go crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
Really. I mean, I could go crazy and yell and, make sure everything going out perfectly how I envision it. And, for the most part, I have people that trust in me, to where they don't have so much of an issue with my vision. So it kind of goes across pretty smoothly. And then, we have our front of house leaders that have really bought into that. They've served at some high end places, certainly around town. I think I got some, one of my guys worked at Uptown for a long time. So the setting there is a little fancier, I think, than Feast is certainly. So they've got that kind of background of high service experience. Another one spent some time at Sundance out in Utah, I believe.
Okay.
Fancy hotel. Well, there's a lot more standards there, strict, protocols and stuff, and so
the plate down on the right side.
And being so small, I think pushing that, I would drive more people away than I would getting the quality people to kind of work with what I want. So
just find that balance.
Yeah.
And I know you almost said Upland. Your sous chef that did the chef's challenge with you, he used to work at Upland.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Brett Holloway. So he's easily, I don't want to play favorites with the children, but he does a great job.
Well, Deion Sanders over here.
Yeah.
You see that? He's been ranking his kids.
He's got a lot of experience. He does a great job. He's one of the ones that's kind of bought into what's going on. And that's why I've taken him with me to the challenge a couple times. And, I can cook, I can, put out the best stuff and make the best recipes, and whether I believe that about myself or not, but without everyone else on board and doing what they do, it sounds, cliche, but it really is without them, I'd be alone in that kitchen doing nothing.
Only so much you can do.
Yeah.
No, you guys, the last time I saw you was the chef's challenge, and I wanted to, again, give you your flowers on just how impressive it is to watch. I mean, I felt so underqualified to be judging people because I don't cook. I just go out to eat. You know what I mean? I'm a front of house dude. I can, make a mean ice cream deal, but I'm not grilling, and just the techniques you guys were using. And what was was it a salmon ceviche that you did? That thing was...
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's I think speaking of Brett in the ceviche, we decided to do that ahead of time together. He's always been kind of a pusher for ceviche on the menu. We don't do a whole lot of raw stuff, but I do from time to time. And I remember the first time it came up between me and him, I was trying to work on a summer menu change, and I was like, all right, well, what are we feeling here? You're going to be the one prepping a lot of this. I'm at a wall. And he's like, I've kind of been feeling a ceviche. And I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And I went in the Feast direction, and I was like, we're going to have this blueberry hollandaise and this different, it was a very obscure version of ceviche. And he was kind of shaking his head at me, and he's like, for the whole time it was on the menu, he's just like, I don't know how this is working, but people loved it. And I was like, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't also know how it was working, but
it's working.
So his style is certainly different, but he's kind of bought into what's going on. And I think kind of the way that we make everything in house really keeps him kind of involved and fresh. And he'll certainly shake his head at me. Oh, they all will though. If whatever we need to do, I try to find the craziest way to possibly do it. And whether that being going out of my way to make something, or just the way it's spun, with whatever. I think the Indian food that I make gets them on their last nerve the most, just because Indian food is such a process. If you get an Indian recipe and you just have the ingredients and you try to make it, if you don't do the processes and be patient with it, that the way they do it over there, it's not going to taste anywhere remotely the same. So they always kind of have a hard time with that. But anytime I do some Indian stuff, it usually comes across as kind of a best Indian in town type of scenario, which kind of feels good. And I always text my stepdad and he feels good about it. But so I don't know, that's a fun little part of the game.
Well, then once they taste it, I'm sure Abel Garcia always tells me about how Jeff Finch taught him, and he put them these different stocks, this one at an hour, this one at 4 hours, this one at 8 hours, just how the flavors developed and how much better the 8-hour stock tasted, and just how important time can be. And it's annoying in the moment, but you gotta put it in, and it's and there's a payoff there.
Yeah. Yep. And I balance that with what's worth it, or is it going to be worth it to spend 8 hours? I think so. And the stock is a good example. Stock is your base. That's what it's called. It's your stock.
Yeah.
And we always put our stock on. He'll put it on about 4 o'clock when he leaves, and then I'll watch it throughout the night and let it go overnight, and he'll take it off in the morning. So we're looking at, almost an 18-hour on all of our chicken stocks or beef stocks, which seems tedious. And if we didn't have the bakers coming in as early as they do, leaving it overnight seems a little precarious sometimes, but I'll leave it 11 or so, and then they'll come in, and it's not that long, but it's those things putting in the work, it's going to pay off. That's, where I'm preaching, doing this one weird way. I'm doing it because I think it's going to pay off. And if it doesn't pay off, we'll know pretty much right away, especially nowadays.
Right.
If it's not selling, I have a tough time sometimes, biting my tongue and being okay, it's not working.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's the small details, and it's the work that everyone puts in that makes it good.
Right. What so I want to go over, since I got to have that experience with you at that Chef's Challenge, and shout out the community kitchen, because they raise a ton of money doing this thing.
It's kind of staggering. Just one little
it's
2-hour event.
I think they've been doing it, I think it's 10 years, they raised over $250,000, something like that. Yeah. It was nuts. I wish I knew the exact numbers better, but really impressive. And it's a cool event they do. It's Iron Chef at the Buskirk. I had the privilege of being asked to be one of the judges this year. Eric was a contestant or participant. I don't know if contestant is the right word. With Brett, your sous chef, Corbin Warwick from One World, and Dan Thomas from Elm, and they all crushed it. It was insane to watch all three of them work, and just how quickly your guys' minds work and what you're able to do, because they have the secret ingredient, which was carrot. What was your reaction when you found out the secret ingredient is carrot? How are we going to incorporate this?
I mean, so it's kind of a hard process. And my initial reaction, I've done it 3 times now. And, the first time it was mushrooms, the second time it was basil, and this time it was carrots. And that moment when they tell you what it is, my mind goes blank. All 3 times, it's just froze up. I don't know what the heck is going on. And then I just got to remind myself to just move. And then, I've done enough to where the instincts kind of take over. And we end up throwing things together. Now, it's impossible to just kind of, in that scenario, in my mind, wait for the ingredient and figure out. So we have a plan going in. That was always my biggest advice when I first started or first did it the first time. So we have a plan. We pick a couple things that we're going to do, and everyone's speculating the month leading up to it. Whenever, they announce or pick who's going to be in it, all the employees are speculating or asking me, and I'm like, I have no clue. We're looking back at some of the past ingredients and we're like, okay, they did this, this. And so it's not going to be any of those. What haven't they done? And then we think of like 5 things they haven't done. And then it's always the 6th thing that we didn't even bring up.
So yeah, you didn't have any inkling like
and all the little speculation, which I've just bowed out from the speculation after the first time, really.
Right.
And so I'll let them throw ideas at me. And I think a part of it was I've been so busy that I didn't have time to really even think about that until the week of. But I think we had a couple different things where like maybe it'll be a fruit, a pear or something, or whatever the case. But carrot was never brought up. So again, I went back to the deer in the headlights when he told us what it was.
Well, you did an amazing job with it. What can you tell people what you ended up doing for your 3 courses?
Yeah, so I'm trying. I obviously the big one that I did. I'm a brunch guy. I work a lot of the brunches, always have. When I like to eat food, I like to eat brunch. So I think that's why it works out so well. So I actually did a carrot waffle. But I did it savory, kind of. It's not your maple syrup and butter, and I used some of my my background to make a curry that went on top of the waffle. And a lot of what with this farm and sustainability that the industry is pushing and using the whole thing. So I use the carrot tops to make a little herb sauce for that, and the carrots obviously in the curry and the carrots in the waffle is like a puree as part of the batter. So that was a good one, utilizing a lot of the part of the carrot, which is like the idea. The ceviche was that was something we planned ahead of time, and that felt like a little bit of a stretch, but it really kind of worked out. Ceviche, citrus and that, and using the carrot kind of juice for that brought like a sweeter side to it, but it balanced kind of pretty well. And I think that dish more than the waffle, though, I used the carrot in, what did Anthony say, like 7 different ways.
Yeah.
I had some like fried carrot bits that gave some texture and carrot and that one was actually a pancake on the other side of that a little bit. So I don't know, it's always fun to do that. And then the drink I made, that touched on kind of the Latin kind of background that I have with the michelada. And that one's always like a savory thing with tomato juice and Bloody Mary-esque. So I kind of just put the carrot right in there, and it ended up working out pretty well and tasting pretty good. I didn't think it looked the best. It was kind of a murky color, but
I thought it looked great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you crushed. That was so difficult. And again, I felt so unqualified to be there. I know, Dan ended up winning this year, but you won in the past. Right.
Yeah, I won last year, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I knew it was recent. And then how'd you do the first time?
The first time I got the People's Choice as well.
Which you did get this year.
And I got that this year. And that's always great. I think, in a lot of ways, that caters towards, the skill and technique and execution, really. Dan Thomas is a great chef and what he's doing over there, and Corbin the same. He's won it twice. So
yeah, it was very difficult
going into this one compared to the first time. I was just raw and I knew nothing of what to expect. So that was just like a culture shock there.
How much time did they give you again?
1 hour.
Yeah, like everything you guys accomplished
feels like 15 minutes.
Well, you were talking about all the different preparations you did. It's like, I just turned it into puree, and then I did this and this. It's like, oh, cool. You had hours. Obviously, it's like you didn't.
No, yeah, and so. Doing it, this being the 3rd time, I definitely felt confident in the process. I think, looking at, even though we're Feast and what we've done, and looking at, Dan, this, new chef in town with Elm, not in town necessarily, he's been at the Story Inn, and, I kind of learned about him during this. But looking at Corbin, who's won it, I felt a little more pressure than I, did in the past. And then the break with COVID where we didn't do the challenge for a couple of years. So I don't know. It was definitely different this time around. While I, had a couple times under my belt and a win for that matter.
Yeah.
I still felt the nerves. It's still a weird kind of feeling when you get out there, and until I get past that deer in the headlights when I hear the ingredient and I just start moving and let my hands kind of take over, that's where it's, maybe I take it for granted. You're sitting there saying like all these different things and just amazed by that. And so that's kind of what makes it kind of worth it. Hearing that kind of stuff.
It's just almost like, muscle memory for you.
Yeah.
What was really interesting to me was how I could just tell Corbin's style, your style. Like I felt like I was at Feast with Dan's. Like I felt like I was at Elm.
Yeah.
Like we weren't in the restaurants. We were at the Buskirk, but like you could just see that vibe of the restaurant coming through in what you guys were serving, which was super, super cool to me. But I think 3 years, 1 overall winner, 2 People's Choice. Like that's a pretty impressive resume, man.
Yeah. I mean, and hard to disagree with you on that. I'm a competitive person.
No, yeah.
So, and I have a lot of support at Feast with, Jenny and her family and everything. And they're, backing me up and, you should have won. And, at the end of the day, the main thing, and I said it on stage, is it's like it's a community event. They got the money.
Right.
And I get the knowledge, and Dan gets a win. He's doing good things over there.
Yeah.
I've been over there a couple times, and
you were giving Elm love early in the episode,
So it's just always a fun and good little thing, and a change of pace, and for a good cause.
It's
so
for a great
really
cause. I feel you though. I would be so like, all right, next year already.
Yeah.
Next year needs to get here right now. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when Tim, he would check in, and when he came back, in June or whatever, and was like, all right, it's that time of year again. I was like, I'll be there and defend the title. And, didn't work out, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't know. It's a lot of work and it's taxing. So I'm at the point to where like, I don't know if I want to do it again.
Right.
But I think I said that after the last time. I was like, okay, I won it. Like, I'm good now. Mm-hmm. But of course, my competitive edge brought me back. But, Dave Talent won a bunch of them, and he's who beat me the first time. So I was pretty new on the stage at that moment. I'd only been at Feast really for 2 years at that time. That was in 1 year really being the executive chef. So that was where I was learning everything and new on the block and going up against kind of the juggernaut and that Dave Talent portrays. And, he goes on to judge it. And so I'll kind of touch on, for me, and like you say, you're not qualified. I almost feel that for myself. And maybe that sounds crazy, but
we were both talking about having imposter syndrome. So.
Yeah. But so I don't know. We'll see what happens next year. Whether they even ask me to do it again, or whether I choose to, or the first or the second time around they did a voting rather than just this time he kind of just asked. The COVID thing kind of switched things up. So the voting would be fun to see.
Voting the 3 participants.
But we'll see what happens. Or, I've thought about if they asked me to be a judge or whether I'd want to do that or not. But I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I hope they ask me back. I can't speak for the other job, but I mean, it was just so close. It was just so impressive across the board for everyone. You threw me off the Michelada because I stopped drinking.
Yeah, I actually heard. I think I heard that after the fact.
I didn't dock you any, so I still tried it because
I appreciate that, and I didn't. If I would have known that, I actually would have maybe made something that was comparable. But maybe that would have pushed me over the edge. I don't know.
No, it was all good because I was just like, I was like, dude, it's a sip of trying it, getting the flavors, seeing the presentation. I didn't fall off the wagon after.
Well, that's good. So, I'm glad to hear that.
There's no blood on your hands.
I think I heard that like a week after, and I was like, oh dang. I wonder if he tried it or not. But
No, I did. No, it was great, man. It was good. Yeah, it was. And again, there's so much stuff in there too.
Yeah.
It's not like it was a Manhattan.
Right.
You know?
Well, I'm glad it didn't cause any problems. I'm glad you got to try it maybe at the same time and had the confidence in that. It's always a tough subject, and I always support. I've had a couple people that have worked for me that have gone through that, and so I'm always supportive of that, and I can see what it can do to people. So I'm glad that all worked out well.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. I thought, if anything, I just thought it was funny. I wasn't trying to be like, I can't believe you served that to me. Well, I remember back. I mean, it's crazy back in the day when I was the front of house manager at Sweetgrass before the Choco Moose, like curating wine lists. And how long has the Hillside Henderson one been there?
I think all in all, Feast as a name has been there for about 13 years now.
Yeah, because I want to say it was like right when I was leaving Sweetgrass is when that Feast was opening. Because I remember one of my wine reps, Gerald Hall, helping like doing some of the wines over there, and he taught me so much about wine, and just that was so much fun, just going on tastings and just getting to know the ins and outs of like fine wine and gins and single malts. And
yeah, I mean it's a lot, and it does tax on you if you know, all the alcohol, and it's a weird thing to kind of be around, and I got to kind of temper myself as well. I do some wine tastings with Jenny, but she, you know, generally these reps will come down at like noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, I can't, I got to work tonight. Like,
yeah.
So I don't often sit in on them, but if they're ever, when we do an event, I usually will go out and I'll have a sip of a couple wines they're tasting, but I'm usually still cooking. So I struggle to find time for that too. So
yeah, well, it's good to have the knowledge for like you said, knowing the pairings, knowing what goes well, and as you're getting more front house experience too. And yeah, I know you kind of shouted out Small Favors and Elm as being two places that really help kind of push you. Are there other places in town that you just are guilty pleasures? Other places that, like, I know you said Uptown obviously does a really great job from the service end. And
yeah. I don't get out a whole lot, but when I do, I think all in all, if I'm going for brunch, which obviously rarely happens because I'm usually working, we just did like 250 people, which is a lot for our small space.
Yeah.
But Uptown's got a decent brunch and breakfast kind of scene. My go-to though, Sunday nights lately has been Da Vinci.
Okay.
Like, I love pizza. They have some pastas there as well. I actually just went there this past Sunday. I had a buddy in town. He's from Columbus, Ohio, so Notre Dame played Ohio State this weekend.
Oh yeah.
So he came into town and he got the last laugh.
Right. Yeah.
But
only 10 minutes on the field for that.
Last game. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I don't
don't remind me.
You know, Da Vinci is a go-to. I've been there the most out of anywhere lately. Good, like, wood fire pizza. I just like the style that they have.
Yeah, it's great. We just talked about that with Sue and Don.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We talked, giving them some love.
And then obviously, I try to make it to Elm whenever there's a menu change, just to kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
See any similarities. I don't see a whole lot about what's going on, and from the good chefs that have gone on to do good things that I've worked either aside or under me, or even before with Erica, one thing that I always worry about is, you know, I don't like to copy other people. It's an obvious, you know, thing in the industry.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing things like we're doing. And often I find that great minds think alike, and there's so many similarities, and a lot of people are like, oh, you're just copying this, or they're copying you, or it doesn't matter. I've heard both ways. And I don't read into that because I don't see what's going on really, but there's a lot of stuff going around. And I think, you know, every time me and when Erica split off and she had Una, you know, there was a weird dynamic there, but there was a lot of similarities, and so people would start to talk about it, and I'm like, I promise I'm not copying. I try actively not to do that, and that ties back to the uniqueness of whatever. So I like to go and see what they're doing. They're obviously making good food, and I like eating good food too.
Right.
But got to get to kind of see what they're doing, and then I, maybe deviate off of that and avoid that. Or
yeah, I've never seen anything where I'm just like, oh, this looks like so and so's doing what so and so's doing, and I feel like it's a lot of like comedians running the same stuff. They'll just find the same kind of joke organically about different things,
Yeah, I mean, and any talk really, whether it's, we don't get a ton of bad reviews, but we're not perfect. But whether it's good or bad, or you copied this or you, whatever the case, I just try not to read into it, and I kind of just make it, and whatever's gonna work is gonna work.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. You know where it came from, and well, those are great. I mean, that's a good list, man. I'm craving Da Vinci now after back-to-back episodes of just diving into Da Vinci. Anything else you want to add before we let you go, man?
No, I mean, I guess one thing that I was thinking of talking about, and I'll at least plug it, even though I think they closed the ticket sales. I'm actually doing an event this Friday with the Indiana Forest Alliance.
Okay.
And I guess by the time this airs, it'll be
way past,
gone.
But still,
but,
yeah, tell.
But it's a foraged feast. So as I'm speaking right now, actually, I think I have a text from someone who wants to drop some stuff by. This past week, we've had just a bunch of people out foraging wild, edible, ingredients. And then this Friday, I'm putting a little cocktail party together for this fundraiser for the Indiana Forest Alliance. So that's going to be a nice little learning experience for me. We do a lot of farm stuff and organic, obviously unique stuff.
Yeah.
But when you really dive into the forage stuff, it's kind of a whole different ballgame. So
that's
looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, Indiana Forest Alliance, go support them, even though this will be out after that happens. We'll talk to you before this gets released. If you have something new that's coming up, we'll include it in the description. And yeah, dude, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you taking the time, and because Feast is it, man. It's the jam. So it's and you've been the one around the show keeping it going, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate everything you do, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on again. And again, it was a fun night off, I guess. At least I didn't have to be in the sweat of the fire, so it's fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thanks, dude. What another great episode. Thanks again to Visit Bloomington for being our Season 5 title sponsor. If you haven't checked them out yet, go to visitbloomington.com. This episode of the No Dishes Podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Garrett Portinga of Green Hat Media in beautiful downtown Bloomington, Indiana.
No dishes.
No Dishes Media.
No Dishes Media.